Hey, and welcome back to the channel, Flight Simulator Enthusiasts. Today's video is all about getting our IL-2 Sturmovik 1946 modded folders patched correctly to SimTools, and it's also about how to get IL-2 Sturmovik controls all set up and bound so then we can have an enjoyable experience with the game. Before we start this though, guys, I have to talk about a discovery that I've made during the week, a horrific discovery, which has meant that the doctor has realized that I have actually led my viewers astray in the last video about what patch IL-2 Sturmovik 1946 actually comes with, and this is apparent with GOG Galaxy and with the Steam download. Unfortunately, they are now patched to the 4.13 version. So when you download them from GOG or Steam, you will get the latest 4.13 version. That's not going to work with the VP mod that we set up in the last video, or if you want the massive BAT mod, it won't work with that either. You need the game to be patched to the 4.12.2M patch. The good news is, as mentioned in the previous video, you can indeed download, install, and run the IL-2 1946 unpatcher, which unpatches the 4.13 version and rolls it back to the 4.12.2M patch, which is what you need. Do a search for that, guys. 1946 4.13 unpatcher. Find it, download it, install it, run it, and get your version back to the 4.12.2M version, so then we're on the same page. I'm here in my user interface, guys. I'm running the VP mod that we installed last week. This is what we are going to work with today. You will need to go to Pilot before you do anything else, and you'll need to set up a profile, so then everything that you do with your controls and your mapping will always relate to this profile. Once you've done that, we can then begin to map controls. But before we do that, let's look at getting this patched via SimTools, so then we will have the correct motion we need when we do get everything assigned and mapped to our controllers, and then we can fly with our flight sim working as we need it to work. So I'm just going to quit out of this because it will mess with SimTools if it's running. Here we have SimTools, Game Engine, and Game Manager already running. First, you want to make sure that in your game selection, you actually have IL-2 Sturmovik selected. I'll just turn on Access Assignment so we can see what was already set up last week. Nothing has changed there. Now, what you'll need to do is you'll need to come to patch. Now, I've got this currently patched, so I'm now going to patch this to our VP mod. So this is a good chance for us to show what needs to happen. I need to remove the patch that's already pointed to the IL-2 BAT mod. So all I'm going to do there is just select Remove Patch. Remove Patch for Motion IL-2 Sturmovik. Okay, the patch is now uninstalled. Now we'll go to Patch. Now we're going to patch this now to our modded version. Would you like to patch IL-2 Sturmovik for Motion? Okay. Please select the IL-2's installation directory. This is good news because now we have the flexibility to select where we want the patch to point to. My version of my IL-2 VP mod is installed on my C drive. I just find it. Here it is here, IL-2 Sturmovik VP mod. Click on that and expand it because you don't want to try and install the patch just onto the parent folder there. The next one that opens, this one, that's the one that you need to highlight and then press OK. It's installed the patch now successfully to our IL-2 VP mod. So you just need to make sure you do that each time you run a new mod with SimTools. Okay, let's get back into the game so then we can start getting all of our keyboard and joystick peripherals mapped in IL-2 Sturmovik. Because IL-2 Sturmovik is an older title, it is only going to recognize a couple of controllers. So if you've got multiple controllers like the Doctor, IL-2 Sturmovik 1946 isn't going to see some of these peripherals. So I'm going to use Antimicro as shown in our previous tutorials with Antimicro. I'll provide a link in the description so then you can go to that link for a more detailed tutorial on how to use Antimicro, though we will show Antimicro being used today, but I'm just not going to cover everything that was covered in the tutorial for Antimicro. So see that link to get the full story. We'll start Antimicro first and foremost. Then we will come down here to if events are not seen by game, please click here to run this application as administrator, and we will habitually from now on make sure we do this before we select any assignments. that restarts the application in administrator mode. Now, along the tabs on the top here in Antimicro, this is what Antimicro is seeing in Device Manager as peripherals that we are using. So for example, my Fanatec Club Sport pedals, which I use as my rudder pedals, Antimicro is seeing those. I do definitely need it to be seeing my MT50 CM3 joystick throttle here, guys, and I can confirm that simply by moving or pressing buttons on the joystick peripheral. When it highlights in red, it means that it is working. Now, we're not going to see anything working with the VJoy because this is our virtual device. This is a driver that's been installed into Device Manager, which emulates a USB device. Here's my Virpril Warbird. If I move the joystick around, it's being seen. Press buttons, etc. They're being seen. And the last peripheral that Antimicro is seeing is this G-Shark. This is a little button box I got off eBay. Cheap little button box with a bunch of buttons and some switching. And Antimicro is seeing that. I'm going to be able to use Antimicro to map any of those peripheral buttons to a keyboard stroke if indeed IL2 Sturmovik 1946 can't see those joystick peripherals, and I can already tell you it won't. So we need to leave this running. We don't close this, we leave this running. Let's go back and let's start our game in administrator mode. I'm going to be running the last mod we installed from our previous video, the IL2 VP mod. So I'm going to assume that you guys have sorted out your patching for this and got the mod installed and it's running. Beautiful artwork. I'm not sure who's done this or whether this was artwork that came with the original Maddox physical DVD. These might be scans of what was in the original manual, is all I can assume, but I don't know. That could be the mother of all stuff-ups, that assumption. I'm just guessing that's what it could be, but it's really well done artwork. It's a shame, actually, that in-game you didn't actually have that level of detail in the terrain. I'm sure it's coming one day. I mean, the new IL2 Sturmovik Battle of Stalingrad series, that has obviously brought in much better graphic details and shaders because of the use of modern day graphics cards and of course, you know, faster PCs now. This is still pretty good overall for a very old game. Okay, we're back into our user interface for 1946. As mentioned, make sure you set up a pilot profile first because everything you assign in controls will be assigned to that particular profile. Important to note, guys, that you will have to do this for every mod. So any mod that you run, you're going to have to map and assign controls to the different mods because they're all different folders, all different ini files, so they'll have to be remapped. You could probably copy the ini file folder that you make in whatever mod you have made the changes in. You could find those key mappings and you could indeed copy those and paste them in your new mod, for example, so you didn't have to go through this. I've done that with other games, and I'm pretty sure you could do that here in IL2 1946. Right, we need to be concerned with controls. Let's click on our controls. Right, so now you're basically going to need to decide what peripherals are important for you to get your game up and running so you can get some flying happening without a lot of stress. Now, obviously, this is going to be fairly subjective to what your joystick peripherals are and how you want to assign your buttons for those commands and those assignments. So what you'll see the doctor get mapped today, guys, is going to be obviously for my Virpril gear and for my little button box. But the principle will remain the same for whatever you have, for whatever joystick you have, and for whatever buttons are available on your joystick, particularly if they're not being seen by IL2 Sturmovik 1946. And the way you will use Antimicro to get them mapped. We're going to be doing a little bit of to and froing between the game here and our button binds and commands, back out to desktop to assign stuff to Antimicro as we need to. So they're the things that I see as being absolute essentials for getting up and running with IL2 Sturmovik and to get your plane in the air and be able to fly it without being completely frustrated. So let's talk about how we would go about setting up our elevator, aileron, and rudder trims. Now for me, I want these assigned to dials on my MT50 throttle box here, okay? So my elevator trim, this will actually assign because this is actually on my throttle slider. I've got some dials actually on my throttle slider. IL2 sees these dials. So if I say elevator trim negative, I'm going to move my dial anti-clockwise. It will see that, no problem. So that's good. It will actually see that. Now I'll do that twice to make sure that's the only bound assignment. Elevator trim neutral. That same dial has a button push. I'll press that. It's already seeing that. Great news. And elevator trim positive, I'll now go clockwise, and it now sees that. No problems with that particular dial on my actual throttle assembly. But now I'm going to go down to my button box, and actually on the box that the actual throttle is attached to on the Virpril MT50, if I try now assign my aileron left trim to one dial, and I'm going to go anti-clockwise with this dial, I'm turning the dial, and IL2 Sturmovik is seeing nothing. I'm pressing that dial because it's got a push application. Sturmovik 1946 is not seeing that dial. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my Windows key. I'm going to make sure that my actual MT50 throttle is assigned in the tabs here in Antimicro. I'm going to scroll down. Guys, sometimes it shows a really limited amount of keys. If the tab is already highlighted, sometimes you have to click off the tab, click back on it, so then it extends all of the assignments you can actually use in this tab. So now what I've got to do, now that I've got that extended, I just need to find where that dial's being triggered here. Antimicro, there it is there. So I'm just scrolling down until I can see me turning the dial to the left. It's a notch dial, and that's it to the right. And then if I press it, there's the button. So that's left on the dial, right on the dial, and pressing the dial, which will become my aileron neutral trim. So I need to assign these to a keyboard stroke. Let's go back out, Windows. Let's find that dial again. So I'll start with the left dial, which will be my left aileron trim. What I'm going to do is click on this pad, and I'm going to make that the left arrow here. For my right aileron trim, I'm going to make it the right keyboard bind. And for the neutral aileron trim, which is this one here, I'm just going to make that number 1 on the number pad here. Now if I come into IL2 Sturmovik, let's try and assign this again. Now I'm going to turn to the left, and magically it is seeing it. There it is. Left arrow like we assigned in Antimicro. The trim is the button press, and it's seeing number pad 1 like we assigned in Antimicro. Aileron right, I'm going to turn the dial to the right. Again, it's seeing now that that is a right arrow assignment on your keyboard when it's actually Antimicro mapping that keyboard assignment from my Virpril MT50. Now this is what you need to do with all of your key mappings. I'm going to go through one more just so then we've done it one more time, and then we're going to leave this video at that because really I'm just rinsing and repeating for every command. So I've given you guys what I believe are your base commands and assignments in this game that I think you should get mapped either to keyboard strokes or to your joystick peripherals or both. It's up to you how you want to run that. If you don't want to be bothered with Antimicro and you just want to try and assign everything to a keyboard, because you can have your keyboard fairly centrally located on your rig and you can get it easily when you're flying, so be it. Do it that way. But if you want to get them all to keyboard, if you want to get them all to joystick peripherals because your hands are on your joystick, either your throttle or your joystick the whole time you're flying it, and you want to be able to just press buttons on your joystick peripherals, you will need to assign Antimicro like I've just shown you here, and we'll do it one more time just so then you can see it, right? So there's a dial right next to the dial on my Virpril MT50 throttle. I've got 2 dials. So this dial I'm going to use to assign my rudder. So let's see what happens if I just try and assign my rudder without any keystroke assignment in Antimicro. And again, this dial is not seen at all. Pressing it, turning it on each one of these possibilities, and we have nada, yada, none. So again, I'll press window key here to get out. Let's have a look in Antimicro where that dial is. There it is there. So this is the next dial I have, which I'm going to assign for rudder. There's the rudder trim neutral on that one. So this time I'll make that number 2. It's number 2 now. And I'm going to make my left rudder, the apostrophe here, and my right rudder, the full stop. Left here, this one I need to assign to our apostrophe or our left arrow key on our keyboard, and then right I will assign to the little right arrow or the full stop on our keyboard. We just leave this active. Come back to IL2 Sturmovik. Let's try and assign left rudder trim now, and voila. I always do it twice, so then that is the only command for that bind. Rudder trim neutral, I'll press the button now on the dial. Yep, it's seeing it because it's assigned in Antimicro. And my rudder trim right, same dial but to the right. Yes, and I'll do that again twice so that it's only seeing the full stop. So that's how it's done, guys. That is how it's done, and that's how you will have to use Antimicro if you want to assign keyboard peripherals that IL2 Sturmovik 1946 doesn't see. Otherwise, get everything on your keyboard. Right, let's save this profile here, right? If we don't save this profile, then when we shut this down and shut down IL2 Sturmovik, we'll have to go through this whole process again, and that is going to be extremely frustrating. So we just simply go here to save. Let's make a config file here for this. You can see I've created a folder here called Antimicro Saves. I'm going to call this IL2 VP Mod, so I know it is for the VP mod and not for any of the other mods, because I might want to assign keybinds differently in other mods. So that just keeps it simple. We've got it saved. Then what you would do is when you come back into Antimicro, the next time you start it, before you start IL2 Sturmovik, you would basically open the application in administrator mode and then press load to load that profile. Simple as that, guys. I hope this video has been helpful for you today to get your IL2 Sturmovik both patched successfully to SimTools and now to be able to enable you to set up all of your keyboard, stroke, and joystick binds into IL2 Sturmovik 1946, either straight from your keyboard or using Antimicro. You guys stay safe, stay healthy, and take it easy out there.